Hi, I'm Michael Coleman from the SoundWorks collection, and today we're talking about the film 32 Sounds, directed by Sam Green, and we're also joined today by re-recording mixer and sound designer Mark Mangini. 32 Sounds is an immersive documentary and sensory experience. The film explores the phenomenon of sound and its power to bend time, cross borders, and shape our perception of the world around us.
I'm listening to a whole other world down there. Aquatic insects, bugs, fish. I think of sound as being a channel of connection.
A lot of people asked me, why sound? All I could say is that something was driving me to make this movie, even if I couldn't say exactly what.
Hello, and welcome to 32 Sounds.
That's how you do it. Okay. So we're here to talk about 32 Sounds, among many other aspects of sound in general. I feel like you guys have been on a world tour of talking about sound to the masses. What has been surprising to you of what general audiences know or don't know about sound? What's kind of the spectrum of audiences when it comes to sound?
It's funny, there's a wide range, and I'm always surprised because I assume most people don't know a lot about sound. I did not know a lot about sound before making this film, or comparatively. But then you'll always get somebody in the audience who actually knows a lot. You know, there'll be a sound designer or a sound studies person or sound artist or musician who knows a lot about sound. So there's a wide range. You never know. So you sort of have to talk for all audiences in a way.
And Mark, for you, for someone who spends most of their waking hours thinking about sound, listening to sound, working with sound, what is it like to then really have to think about sound in ways that people, I think, are very interested in sound, and it's like front and center with a film like this?
The thing I'm really excited about with this film is that it's a sort of an awareness-raising film. And I don't want to throw any shade on it by making it appear to be some kind of scientific treatise on sound, which it's not. It's really about sound in the more expansive sense of what is sound and what does sound mean to us, and why don't we think about sound in a more critical way, because it is so meaningful in the way we conduct our lives. And I think that's the really fun exploration that Sam did in this film, which was, I know I'm impacted by sound, but I don't quite understand why. And maybe if we talk about it a little bit, I think we'll all learn something along the way. And you can speak to this better than I, but I was always fascinated by the fact that you jumped into this subject without a large knowledge of sound, with the hopes that you discovered along the way as you made the movie. And I found that really interesting.
I like research. I love research and making documentaries where you learn a lot. And so this was a huge challenge, because I did start off saying to myself, I'm going to make a movie about sound, knowing that there are people out there who know a ton about sound, somebody like Mark, for example. So learning, and we talked for about a year before we even decided to work together. I just kept bugging Mark, and can I call you in a week with more questions? And, it was great. I learned. I got a graduate degree in audio, talking to Mark. So it's been fun. But I do think, to answer your question, I think Mark is a great ambassador for sound, because he has both a deep technical knowledge also, but more of a kind of figurative understanding of sound, or poetic understanding about sound, and is able to talk both languages, because there are a lot of sound people who can only talk tech.
Mark, I know a few.
The kilohertz
we know a few.
As we were saying earlier.
Kilohertz guys.
Oh, I know those people.
But Mark is great because he can also talk about sound in a way that resonates with ordinary people, because people are hungry, are interested in sound. And I think just the idea that, when he did Dune, there was big articles and a lot of coverage about how the sound was made in a way that I don't think had happened in the past. People are getting more hip to how things work and interested.
Something that's always interesting to me is how people talk about sound, the words they use, the associations, because it's one of the senses that you can't necessarily touch. You can feel it.
Yeah.
You can't taste it, but you can't see it always.
Yeah.
So when people talk about it, it's this invisible kind of sensation. So what have you guys found through this film with audiences kind of being, because that's the kind of magic of this film, is you kind of explore the different ways that you do experience sound. What have you found audiences were, new ways that they're experiencing sound?
Well, I mean, there's the sort of like straightforward way people see the movie and learn a bit about sound, like, oh, sound hits your whole body in addition to just going in your ears, or, that kind of thing. But I think more than that, the movie resonates with people in an emotional sense. And often people are puzzled why they have such strong feelings seeing the film. I'll have people say, I was crying during that scene with Edgar Schwery and his 11-year-old self, and I have no idea why. And to me, that just is like a reflection of how sound works, the mystery and power of sound. Because sound, you pointed out, if you see a painting on the wall, you come back the next day, it's still going to be there. Visual stuff is stable in a way, but sound is mysterious and slippery and ephemeral, and we don't have good words for talking about it. So it, in a kind of emotional, poetic way with the film, it sneaks up on people. It's that Randy Tom quote that sound is a second-class citizen in our consciousness, but it has a secret weapon, stealth.
I love that quote. Yeah.
Mark, I think something that's I think about a lot, which is when you see a sunset, beautiful sunset, like, oh, you pull out your phone, you take a picture of it. Okay, right. I got it. You look at your photo.
Yeah.
It's not that good. It's never going to count. And I think of sound for movies in the same way. Like in your mind, I want it to. You're recreating an experience for somebody, right. Something that you hear or you're thinking about in your head. How have you found with this film, when something you hear something and you want to translate to the audiences? How do you get closest, or do you feel like you can never get closest to what you're thinking, and what's like maybe what to you is kind of that sacrifice of trying to reproduce what it sounds like in real world, but we know we can't get, like, how close can you get to the real world sensation of what sound is?
Well, there's the technical discussion of how to do that, which is how to recreate the way we hear, which is immersively. And one of the interesting discussions that Sam and I had early on was my kind of impoverished view of the documentary filmmaking community was that you put a camera and you put a mono shotgun microphone, and that's how you make a documentary.
It's kind of true.
And sadly, it's true. And so I'm going to throw some shade here on the documentary.
I love documentary, but you're not wrong.
So one of the early discussions we had from a technical standpoint was, how do we make this more engaging? And I thought, well, if a documentary is meant to be some representation of truth cinematically and narratively, why doesn't sound follow suit? A camera can capture, almost 160 degrees like the periphery of your vision. But if you're putting sound center speaker, one mono shotgun microphone, that isn't much of a representation of how we feel. So I felt the need to want to engage the audience more fully with immersive sound. And so once we started talking, started adding binaural recording into the production process and ambisonic recording into the production process, so that the audience would feel a fuller sense of immersion into that scene. And hopefully that makes the movie more engaging.
Was that for you, Sam, what you intended when you started, or did that only show up when Mark started working with you?
I can't quite remember. I mean, I started off saying I was going to make a documentary about sound. I started looking into sounds. I think really early on it became clear, though, that there's the question of the sounds and then the question of how you represent the sounds. And like Mark said, if you represent those sounds with a mono microphone, you're going to get a sort of emotional response that's this big. But if you can represent things in a full, realistic way, it's like the difference between shooting something in VHS and shooting it in HD. So that when we talked and sort of came up with this idea of binaural ambisonic recording, that was a real game changer in a way for the film, for the process.
You didn't really know about those technologies. You kind of
I
knew
had
about
seen
binaural from Simon
the
McBurney's
encounter,
thing, right?
But I didn't know how it worked at all, and I didn't know what would be involved. So
I'd love Sean to listen to something if he's able to.
Yeah.
Can you take a break and listen to something? There's this really wild little fluttering sound going on down there, and I can't begin to think what it is.
You've ever heard that?
No. There's something I started writing about a year ago. Listening with, as opposed to listening to. And it's my sense that if I'm standing here, I'm just one of many organisms that are listening with one another within this environment, not even to the environment, we're within it, and we're all listening together, as it were. You too, and Sean, and you, all of us.
Something that I like about this film is there's many ways to experience it. I experienced it when Mark reached out and said, hey, it's playing at Stanford, and it was a headphone experience, and it was live narration, and your composer, JD, was doing music, and it was like, oh, I mean, I knew nothing going in, so for me, I was like, oh, I should have dressed differently. I should have like not. I mean, maybe I had dinner after, like, or just like the whole experience of the movie making. I was not expecting it to be full that involved, which was really, I think, refreshing as an audience member and someone who spends a lot of time around sound.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you arrive at we're gonna allow people to hear it in headphones, like? Because that's like a big technical, we're worried just enough like going to theaters and making it sound good, and now you're introducing like, well, we're gonna have a headphone experience.
Right. Well, it was one of the early sort of quandaries was you make a documentary about sound. How do you go around showing it in theaters with a wide variety of sound systems? I love art house cinemas, but many of them are terrible sound systems. So, you know, you make this, someplace would play it in just stereo or even mono. So the producer, Josh Penn, at some point said, I have a terrible idea for you. And I said, what? And he said, what if everybody wears headphones? I thought, that's actually a good idea. Because I had seen this Broadway play, The Encounter, where audience all wore headphones, and he used a binaural mic. And it was an amazing effect. That effect is what lingers with me about 10 years later. So once we decided to do that, then it was kind of like, okay, how could we do this? And, you know, we bought 500 sets of headphones and travel around with somebody who wrangles them and mixes, and no problem.
Some problems.
Yeah, it's some problems,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. But then there's a lot of iterations of the film, and the one you saw was sort of like the fancy live version.
The director, the composer, live performance, like that's you never get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
and that's
cool.
special. There's something special about that kind of experience. But then Film Forum wanted to show it in New York. We'd only mixed it for headphones. And I said to Mark, could we ever do this in a theater with 5.1? You thought
What'd you
about
say, Mark?
it. You thought about
I
it?
knew, unbeknownst to you, I had prepped it in 7.1, thinking someday this is going to happen. But
The truth comes out.
Sorry,
yeah.
I don't mean to.
And I'm adopted. Here's where you tell me I'm adopted.
But I didn't know fully how I would get there. The tricky process would be converting binaural 360-degree immersion into flat speaker systems, and I didn't know how I'd fully achieve that. So I was kind of prepped for it and waiting for the word go.
But even binaural is really powerful. I remember just some of the subtleties and some of the kind of opportunities you create for the audience to listen and to experience. Binaural, a lot of people have not heard binaural. And when you are recording or recreating binaural, it's still a pretty magical experience.
Yeah.
Mark, for you, how far do you stretch and pull that experience for audiences? Or do you feel like you're trying to still be authentic to maybe a documentary kind of, filmmaker type of position?
Well, the binaural sections, the really sort of like tittery, the ones that we get the most visceral responses from, like Edgar doing the matchsticks and so on and so forth. those are sublime moments that are exactly as recorded. That is literally 2 channels of binaural audio going right to the headphones. There's no trickery on my part. There was trickery to try to recreate that in 5.1 because you don't have all the oral attributes of a binaural recording like proximity and 360-degree spatiality. You can't do that on speakers. So I had to come up with a lot of clever, technical, kilohertzy kinds of stuff.
There you go, Sam. You said it. You did it.
I said it. Sorry.
You said it.
To approximate that. But, there's something fun about the headphone version. There's this sort of dichotomy for me. I love the headphone version. And I think that gives us the most sort of private experience of immersive sound. And I love taking my headphones off during the Edgar Shueri sections to hear the giggles and the vocal reactions to being like a person feeling like they're immersed in a way they've never been immersed before, and like sound is moving them. And I love that moment. And yet I know it also comes kind of at the expense of the communal experience of cinema that you don't get when you have headphones on, because you're not hearing the collective feeling that and experiencing it.
One of the beautiful moments is when you take a moment, you get quiet. With dynamics are always really powerful. When you get really quiet and you hear snowflakes. To me, it's just like there's so much emotion tied into silence for people. For me personally, it's just like, like I forgot what it's like to be silent. I forgot what it's like to be just in the presence of kind of stillness, which I think after being in the pandemic, everyone's like, I don't want stillness. Like we're good. But for you, how does silence play into your process when when you're thinking dynamics and sequencing of the 32 sounds? Where did silence kind of make sense for you?
Well, it was really clear to me that we needed to have sort of the widest dynamic range of any movie I'd ever seen. Just we're talking about sound. We should do everything. And so, I mean, there is quiet in the film. And the scene you mentioned about the sound of snow falling was a really fun scene because what a challenge. The sound of snow falling is not really the sound of snow falling. It's the feel of quiet, the feel of stillness, the feel of the night. The sound is sort of half of that. And so we talked a lot and worked a lot in how to make a sonic representation of that and make people feel what they would feel. The other thing, though, is there is silence in the film. There's literally no sound. And Mark at first was like, you cannot do this.
That's right.
We cannot have
Like
silence.
faders down to zero, nothing?
Zero.
Literally,
Nothing.
it's digital zeros.
He was like, people are going to think the sound system
Right.
broke.
That's
you
right.
know?
I did say that.
And I liked being radical. We did it. We did it. And
I don't like being wrong.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, but that's like from Mark's thinking it may potentially from a technical standpoint. Like we never room tone is room tone. There's
Right.
always something. But like no sound is broken sound system.
Right.
Dead.
Right.
Like the association.
It's under the scene with Christine Sun Kim, the deaf sound artist. So it makes sense. It's conceptual. It's not gratuitous.
No, not at all. And interestingly, though, we had the kind of 180-degree polar conversation about the loudest sound in the world, which we opted not to use.
That was great.
Right?
I came to Mark and I said, because finding the 32 sounds was just sort of curiosity and whimsy. You know, at some point I read some reference to the loudest crowd sound in the world, and I researched it. It's, you probably know this, Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their stadium,
they're proud of it.
yeah,
of course.
And there's
They're deaf.
So I thought there's got to be a YouTube video. I watched it. It's great, you know, dramatic moment. But it wasn't that loud. I turned my computer up all the way and it wasn't that loud.
Yeah.
So I said to Mark, how could we get this in the movie? And Mark thought about it in his Buddha-like way and said, we can't. It's the feeling of being there, the vibrations bouncing off the walls. There was so much, you know, and in a way it's the mirror opposite. You're right, the inverse of the sound of snow falling. It's just pretty impossible to
And
recreate.
it would require something that I don't think we would want to do, which is to actually achieve it to prove our point.
Right.
We would have to subject the audience to the loudest sound, which means that's painful.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we wanted to do that.
Yeah.
When you go into a movie, you're one person. You leave a movie, you're a different person. Like, there's no way you can, whether you like the film or not. Like, you're always, people have opinions, people have experiences, and this film is one that I think, even for me, like I said, we live, we work like day to day. Like, this is, but I left the film thinking, well, there's still more work to be done when it comes to how audiences experience sound, because I think this film proves that in so many ways. With a dance party at the end, like is one.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, we're gonna actually have a dance party at the end. Like, we're gonna ask the audience to get up and like have a dance party, which is, well, like, how far was too far for you?
To me, I was trying to make the strongest experience an audience can have to engage people on as many levels as possible. And the dance section is fun and it changes the energy, but it also is really about feeling sound in your body, which is a huge way we experience sound. And rather than do it in sort of like a lecture-y science film way, it does it in a fun, interactive way that hopefully you get something out of. And it's funny, in the live shows when people do that, you can feel a totally different energy in the audience. It's a complete reset. It's like the seventh inning stretch, and it's really nice. And people clap afterwards and are different in that moment. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like the film pushes it on many fronts, like close your eyes. I've never seen a movie that asks you to sort of turn off your vision, but that too was just trying to get people to really listen and open their ears. And that's a kind of cinematic intervention that hopefully does it. But again, not weird for the sake of being weird.
That's one of my favorite moments in the movie, because you encourage people in the live version to come and touch the subwoofer.
Yeah. Yeah.
just makes me giggle.
Touch grass, people. Let's go.
It's just, to me, it harkens back to 2001.
Yeah. But most people haven't really had that experience.
Right.
Of like,
no, but then they connect physically now to sound, and that's an enlightening and fun moment. In fact,
But myself and my other music producer friend, like, we didn't get up, but we were really, it was really fun to watch everyone else be really excited. I'm like, oh, Sam went there. I enjoyed it, but it was really like you get jaded, but you forget that people who have not been exposed do not have that experience.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
And it is in some ways. I mean, I appreciate that sound people like it, but it is really for non-sound people ultimately.
I'm glad you said it, because I didn't want to be like, is this for me? Which is like, well, okay, so let's go back to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So if the audience, or this film is for so many different types of audiences.
Yeah.
When you make a film, you kind of make it for yourself. Or I think of that as a filmmaker. You make it for yourself. So who did you imagine your audience was?
Well, I do think I agree with you that you sort of make something that you would want to see and you would get something out of. I mean, I feel like we can cater to multiple audiences here, in that there's something that sound people who know a lot about sound will appreciate, but also somebody who knows nothing about sound will too. And that's the goal. And it's not easy to do, to make something that doesn't sort of dumb things down too much or talk at too high a level.
Well, you can't make it for everyone.
Right.
Like that's.
Well, you kind of can, I think.
Oh, okay. Go on.
I mean, you can.
Tell me
Let's get the secrets.
I mean, there's not everybody in that, but a wide audience. I mean, I've maybe nobody's said this to my face. They're just saying it behind my back, but I've not met anybody who said like, that was too complicated for me, or that was too dumb for me.
Right.
Well, I think it's like when you go to a museum, you're just presented with the artwork and you're not being told what to think or feel.
Right.
Right. So it's the audience to meet you in the middle or to take it further.
Yeah.
That's why we return to cinema, because it's like, as you bring the audience brings themselves to whatever the storyteller is presenting. Yeah.
And if you can create a space for them to be and have a meaningful experience at whatever they're bringing, that's the great challenge.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction was like, oh, this film's out for me, and then it wasn't until later I was like, no, like there's still something to take away, because I think you go in thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like be impressed or learn something. I'm just this me like with the sound engineer hat on.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know everything. What possibly more could I learn? But you're reminded. You're like, really, there's precious moments that you're like, oh, I forgot how effective that was. Yeah. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
Yeah. And Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to ask you, you've worked on two wonderful films kind of in the same, Goodnight Opie and 32 Sounds, both utilizing sound. The question I want to ask you is, sound, unfortunately, is considered a post-production process.
Right.
Or can be categorized as post-production.
Right. Traditionally thought of might be.
But in both of these instances, you have not taken a post-production process approach. How have you found, not that how it influences the work, but what do you appreciate about actually having a filmmaker that understands that sound is not post and that your contributions are more than just reactionary? Like, letting you actually play.
There it is. It allows sound to be proactive. And I would argue, and Sam should comment, sound can influence the filmmaking.
And, should influence.
And yeah, exactly. And that I preach that a lot, as you know, that sound can be a part of pre-production, production, and then post-production, and influence the process. And to such an extent that Sam, in that year of early discussions, would call me and run ideas by me, like the crowd, the loudest sound in the world, and others, and we'd talk about the merits or demerits of such a sequence, and that, I think, influenced how you approached what you were going to put in the movie and how you were going to put it in the movie. So much so that maybe we talk about subwoofers now or something like that. Yeah. And Don Garcia.
Yeah. Oh, Don Garcia. Right. That was a big, the In There Tonight guy. That was like a huge challenge. That was a big challenge.
Well, what's interesting is that everyone who's experienced Don Garcia understands, they've heard the music, but they don't quite, as you didn't understand where that kind of comes from. Everyone knows that they feel him coming, but they don't necessarily hear him coming. But they're not quite clear on what the mechanism is by which the sound is affecting them. And that begat a conversation with Sam about the need. If we're going to do a headphone show, we need a subwoofer because the headphones won't reproduce that. But that's kind of a geeky, techie kind of thing that just came up.
But also that was great. Remember when we're working on when I was shooting Don Garcia, I think we talked, and the idea was the sound recorder should hold the mic out, and I think the hope was that she would actually get the sound of the song booming off the buildings, and we could use that, which we never did. No. You know, it wasn't, the car was so damn loud, the car itself, the street, it didn't, her recording didn't bear any relationship to what the experience of the experience of it was.
Yeah.
How have you, for you, Sam, how have you realized documentaries in this day of age? I feel like people like to say it's a golden age. Like there's resurgence, there's a renewed interest in documentaries. What is it about having a film out like this today, where people are not only interested to see new subjects, but also kind of show up in ways that, I think we're saying, like, there's different ways to experience a documentary now for you. What's your takeaway from releasing the film now? This time?
Well, I think there are a lot of films now. There's a lot of documentaries, and people, there's a lot of celebrity documentaries and a lot of sort of documentaries where you can watch the trailer and you don't need to actually watch the film because you've pretty much can figure it out. So I feel like people appreciate formally interesting or films that you don't know where they're going. I like that. You're like, what? I had no idea it was going to go this place. So I try to make that. But also sort of connected to what you said, I'm a total evangelist now for sound in documentaries, for actually sophisticated use of sound in documentaries. Because Mark was right. Documentaries have been super primitive in thinking about sound. And I think it's just technology. Things have always only been on TV or in theaters. It's sort of limited things. But the truth is, and this, gaming and VR are way ahead of documentary.
Yeah. Way
ahead. And so it's crazy. Documentary should open itself up to other forms and learn.
Mark, did you think that as you're working through this film and the 32 sounds that Sam had selected, did you think, oh, maybe we should? Have you thought about this? Like, what opportunities did you find? Oh, I think maybe this might be an interesting avenue of how you could kind of insert yourself of enhancing either the 32 sounds that Sam was picking up, or just new ways that we could just, I think, surprise audiences.
One of the contributions that I made ended up in the film, which was, though Sam knew about binaural recording, he had never met Dr. Choueiri.
Yeah.
And Dr. Choueiri is a research physicist at Princeton, and I'm engaged in a venture with him to exploit binaural over loudspeakers. And I just thought Sam should meet Dr. Choueiri and see where that led.
Yeah.
And it led
to
two wonderful sequences in the movies.
In real life, sounds can come from very far away from you or from very close. And as the sounds bounce off your head and those weird ridges in your ears, and as they travel through your skull, they're muffled in very particular ways that your brain actually uses to make sense of where the sounds are coming from.
Spatial sound is technology that will allow you to capture sound and reproduce it exactly where it was in space, in 3D space, including very close to you or very far from you or above you or underneath you. So this way you can hear birds in the sky where they belong, a river running under you, or a wave at the sea. You can also get proximity, which surround sound cannot give you. So this is just to give you a test of how you can locate sound in space.
That just felt good that I could leverage my own knowledge to the betterment of the telling of the story Sam wanted to tell, without it being something about, frequency response or subwoofers, the kinds of, pigeonholes where sound people usually stuck in. So that kind of engagement felt really good. Mm-hmm. But I didn't suggest any specific sounds. I never felt that was my place with Sam.
But sometimes through discussion things came up, like the Venice bells.
Oh, yeah.
Remember you talked all about with Kafka, you had recorded bells with Steven Soderbergh.
That's right.
A million years ago. And that whole conversation got me interested in bells. And then I was in Venice and we talked a lot about how to record bells. And that was great. Yeah. So a lot of it was back and forth. But the Edgar Choueiri thing is totally true. He only is in the film because you knew him and turned me on to him. I went over to his house. We talked. He's a great character.
I never saw this movie, and I think Sam agrees, as being about the 32 sounds. I mean, it's 32 because of the reference to the Glenn Gould movie. Yeah. But I was never invested in, should it be about Foley, or should it be about a tree falling, or should it be about a guy playing in the air tonight? I was more invested in Sam's deep dive into those sound ideas and how do we best present them in a way that makes the audience stop and think or feel. That's where I wanted to get with it.
Yeah. Sam, for you, I know like when you screen your film for an audience, there's like a sensation that you really can't explain. Like the body, just like the brain goes into overload and all the emotions of, as a filmmaker kind of come crashing sometimes. Yeah. What has it been like for you to see the variations of audiences experience your film, and what's your takeaway from just all the wide swings of experiences that people are having?
Well, I've been surprised. I mentioned this, and it's always funny to talk about your own film in this way, but I've been surprised that it's gotten such an emotional response. I've made a lot of films, and no film has ever been like this, where people sort of seem to be very effusive afterwards, almost like in a surprising way.
Yeah, they went to a movie they didn't expect to get.
Yeah, and just an emotional experience. And again, I sort of credit that to the odd power of sound and how it can work on people. I also think after the pandemic, people have a lot of feeling that's sort of been just shut up inside, and that sometimes a work of art can elicit that, and it surprises people. They don't realize that they're carrying around a lot, but we all are.
I think when we go to theaters, we're okay with turning our phones off, hopefully turning off the distractions and just kind of committed to that, experience. Mark, what do you imagine is going to happen? Like, this film will eventually be in a streaming or home experience?
Yeah. We hope.
What are your thoughts just about, as it continues, and now it'll be on tablets, or like it's pretty well. I'd also say that now we can experience binaural with technology.
As long as people wear headphones, I'm great with it. You can watch it on your phone. If you wear headphones, it's fine. Yeah. But what's your answer?
Well, I'm too deeply invested in the power of sound, so the idea of consuming something on a mobile phone is anathema to me. Yes, I would encourage anyone to at least enjoy it over headphones, or in some fashion that reproduces audio in its highest form. That's because I am invested in and believe that the enjoyment is that much more enriched when everything is working well, not just sound.
Yeah.
The picture is color corrected, the image is right, and it's sharp and in focus, and the sound is right, and you feel immersed. It's like you're engaged and you're in real life.
I mean, this is a film. I mean, kudos to you, Sam, to going out there with a headphone mix. I don't know if I've been to the silent disco parties type of thing.
Yeah,
that's a different expectation. It was at Stanford. It was a really nice auditorium tonight. You're playing here at Dolby tonight. You'll be at Skywalker Sound, and that'll be a theatrical presentation,
7-1,
right? Yeah. But I just it's one of the films I think I'd rather actually maybe hear in headphones over, because I think that experience is very intimate and personal.
Yeah.
Which you do not have in most films. So
yeah.
I don't know. Did you before it was? I guess what I want to ask you is, before the headphone idea came up, how close did you think you could get to getting that personal?
You can get kind of close. You can make a film that feels intimate in a sort of theater speaker environment, but not quite really. Yeah. I mean, there is something unique with when you wear headphones. Not only are you getting close sound, but you're alone in the world.
Right. You're isolated.
There's a certain kind of existential poignancy that comes in that state that really is the nature of that state, or that comes out of that. So it's hard to get that in any other way. But I was curious about combining that headphones alone way of being with the magic of cinema, which is you're sitting in a theater with strangers and you go on an adventure together. That's great. That's amazing. And so having both of those, it's like the old Reese's peanut butter ads where somebody has peanut butter, somebody has chocolate, and they run into each other, and you get the best of both worlds. So I like that.
Yeah. Mark, what have you found? Just going off a little tangent here, but as we get into the world of AI with sound, it's pretty amazing that people are interested in thinking about sound in new ways. Mm-hmm. I think we've been subjected to so many different formats and kind of configurations, but now I think with AI, we've been kind of exploring. Myself, I've been exploring audio in new ways that I didn't think was possible.
Right.
How have you find technology, and it doesn't have to be AI, but just technology has started to influence how you think about sound?
Technology is a means to an end for me. The goal ultimately for me is some level of verisimilitude. And verisimilitude comes in lots of different flavors. There's true verisimilitude, which is like verite cinema. Verisimilitude is exactly the way you would have experienced it had you been there. So I'm really interested in technology that can provide that experience. I'm also really interested in technology that creates my narrative idea of this verisimilitude I want an audience to experience. And so in movies like Dune, I want the audience to feel like they're on Arrakis as if they were really there. So technology constantly gives me better and better tools to be able to create that convincing environment so that we can transport an audience at least sonically, if not visually. Yeah. And I think once you do that, that's the magic. That's the what did Randy say? That's the secret. It's stealthy.
Yeah.
That's the stealth of storytelling for me, and that's one of the reasons why I love sound, is that we can displace an audience and make them forget they're in a cinema if the sound is believable enough. And that's where technology is really meaningful to me.
Sam, something I really love is perspective of where the camera would be on your subject. Sometimes it's just right on their face and you can't look anywhere else. How did you decide how camera was going to play into perspective?
Well, I like close-ups. I like being right up on people with a wide lens, so you're really close. You know, you're like that. Just because I like seeing the play of emotion on somebody's face. But sometimes it's wider, and one of the funnest things with this movie is getting the sound people to be in the shot. You know, because sound people are always, that's the worst thing. That's verboten, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd have to be like, Laura, can you just scoot into the frame a little? You know, and it was just as if they were in a nightmare or something. But we did, and that was fun because my feeling with the film is if you want people to think about sound, constantly remind them that they're listening, constantly remind them that we're recording sound. And so that was a playful little device to do that. And plus it's fun, you know, you never see that in a movie. So it was a pleasure to kind of break the rules like that.
One of the really fun moments is when you go visit the pond, the water, use some, you know, hydrophonic kind of recordings, which I think of some of my early work was listening to recordings from Alan Splett, which is like in Krober, a lot of contact microphones, which I had never experienced before. What did you guys find with different types of microphones? Like you did have boom and you have like a documentary production, but you had the hydrophone. Like what were some of the other, and binaural. So like what were some of the other tools that you kind of were trying to introduce?
Binaural recording, the dummy head, ambisonic.
And in the marsh, we used ambisonics. We got atmospheres because they were very rich and immersive. And
that's right. And the crickets at her house at the end we used. We had somebody go back with an ambisonic mic.
That's right.
So that was all new to me. You know, like any documentary filmmaker, I'd never really even heard of that way of recording things. And it's so wonderful. It's so rich. So those were the main ones. She used the underwater mic.
But that was hers. That was hers. A specialty of Aeneas.
Then at the end, the tuning meditation, they recorded that with their own binaural mic or ambisonic mic. They actually had a bunch of mics.
Remember they had like 8 microphones.
Stereo mics. They really mic'd the hell out of that thing.
Yeah, that sounded really
and
great.
And gave us all the recordings. So that was great.
Right.
So Mark, you were saying you had maybe a 7.1 kind of bed. You start with the 7.1 and then what was your process for kind of delivering the different types of experiences that you knew that Sam was going to go out with?
The hero mix was always the headphone mix. And so I built in a 7.1 template because I had this sense that someday Sam would call me and say, we're going to show it in the theater.
No, he'd say, do you think we could show it in the theater?
Or whatever. So everything was laid out ready to be deployed in traditional theatrical monitoring environment. But most of the work was done, the first work was done over headphones. And as a binaural mix, that was going to be our hero mix. And so it was taking elements that were not binaural and making them as binaural as possible with plugins and things like that. And then being true to the original binaural recordings that we did have. And then making several iterations of that would include the live version, which is pretty much the film clips without any voiceover or live or music.
Yeah.
And then there was another iteration where it would be Sam's narration and the music, but binaural as a complete mix, meaning it's not a live show.
Right.
And then we also had a live show with music without narration.
Yeah. And then there was also...
I know there's more. Keep going.
We had one where we do have a mix where it's headphones, but you use the PA in the house.
That's it. I knew.
So that's a whole complicated business there.
It's a blend.
Yeah.
At that point.
And somebody in the back is bringing up the house and the subs during scenes that... Because that was great because like the cicadas, for those headphones, really you can't do that much. You know, it starts to clip and it just was limited. So if we bring it up in the house, it's much fuller in an interesting way. And very few people in the house will say, oh, I get it. You're playing it in the house too, but they feel it.
Yeah.
They definitely feel it.
I think one of the fun challenges for me was not only working in binaural, which I had never done, but doing a headphone mix, which I had never done, and I don't think you had ever done.
Why would anybody have ever done it?
So we just jumped in feet first. I didn't know the
and then
technical side of it.
to make it even more complicated, remember we mixed for really good headphones.
That's right.
And then we had to do a mix for the FM headphones, which are not great.
Right.
You know?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that was like
a shitty
heartbreaking.
headphone and good
Remember
headphone
you had
mix.
to you were like, we got to bring down the plane overhead. I was like,
Oh.
no, you know.
It's pretty. I mean, it's advantageous. Just to take on that responsibility of assuming that there's more than one kind of presentation. But I think that to me, when I saw it at Stanford, it was one experience. When I saw it at home, it was one experience. I think tonight will be a theatrical experience. So there's more.
Well, you'll be one of the few people who've seen 3 radically different versions of it.
And every time is different because there's different aspects that come through more than others. So
You're going to get a one-off tonight because John has implemented this new system,
the Constellation,
the Constellation system with Meyer Sound that I can't wait to hear. So here's yet another deliverable.
Well, Sam, Mark, you guys, thank you so much for your time, for this film. Sam, I feel like you're doing good work out there for the sound community. It's not a small thing.
Well, I do it humbly because sound people in general know way more about sound than me. So I definitely feel like, you people, this is your work and your life.
Mark?
I love this film. I'm immensely proud of it, and I feel like this speaks so well to the world about all the things I preach about listen and think about your relationship with sound because it's going to enrich your life.
Thanks so much for watching this episode about 32 Sounds. For more information, visit us at soundworkscollection.com, and we'll see you soon.